Joel Klatt is, despite our differences, as I've talked about this before, I'm a bit of a mentor to Joel, and I love having him on. He's had 44 quarterback records at Colorado. Most of those have been wiped out, I'm sure. But it's still great to have him on. Joel Klatt, the voice of college football, the well-appointed man who comes on with nothing but information.
What's up, man? How are you?
I'm great. Let's start with
this.
Wait,
can I go backwards real quick?
Okay.
Did you say Cleveland's in the top 10 in your league?
Yeah, because I think Baker, now that he's playing well, is interesting.
Oh. He's been very nice to Cleveland.
No kidding. You know, people love me there. They don't admit it, but they do.
No, I've actually been there. They don't.
Joel, he put the Cleveland Browns above the Steelers in the herd hierarchy this week.
Well, that's questionable in and of itself. But, you know, he might be trying to hey, Cleveland, he's trying a little too hard for your affection. You know what I mean?
Anyway, so I want to say this about Ohio State. So this happens, doesn't happen a ton in sports, but there are moments where Tiger was actually bigger than golf for a while. Like he left tournaments and they shut down one in Colorado and the Masters lost half its audience. So, and it's rare. Michael Jordan left. The NBA didn't have the next Michael and they lost 50% of their numbers. So he was at least worth the league, his value. So I look at Ohio State this morning and my takeaway is if I was Ohio State, I'd be like, I don't care what the conference says. The bottom line is I want to get to the playoff.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to say this respectfully because our network has the Big Ten. They've outgrown the Big Ten.
In a lot of respects, and yet I think that they're also sensitive to the fact that, you know, this is not new, right? The Big Ten is not new. This was not just put together. This is not like the Pac-12 in this iteration where it feels kind of new. Like the Big Ten has history to it, and so much. I mean, Michigan, Ohio State have played every year since 1917, and so I think that they're at least sensitive to the fact that they don't want to throw that out because of 1 year, but the Big Ten has done no favors to Ohio State at all.
Give me an example.
They, first and foremost, Ohio State was fighting for them to just be patient at the beginning. Don't do anything rash like cancel the season.
You're right.
And they did it anyways.
You're right.
Okay. And so then Ohio State had to fight to even get back onto the field this year in order to potentially play for a national championship. And once they got that momentum going, Ohio State was fighting for an early October start. And the Big Ten punted on that, and they wanted to go later in October. Well, when you go later, now you don't have any wiggle room. And in terms of Big Ten teams, Ohio State is the only team in the Big Ten that has lost 2 games, not on the scoreboard, obviously, but gotten canceled because of COVID issues at other schools. They're the only one that has had 2 games now.
That's a good
postponed because of other schools' issue. Now, they had one postponement because of their issue in the Illinois game. But in terms of Maryland and now Michigan, it would be the opposite side of that.
So if Ohio State says today, talk to the hand, right now, all we care about is Alabama, Clemson, Notre Dame. We're moving past your conference and your issues right now. I would defend them on that.
But what would they do? I guess that would be my question. In what regard? Do you want them to just go find a game?
Well, my thing is, or no, why do I need to find a game? You butchered it. The playoff's going to let me in. I'm going to be let into the national championship, that grouping. So why do I have to appease you, the Big Ten? Everybody knows I'm one of the 4 best teams. That's what I care about for the rest of the year.
Yes, but I still think that they need games, right? And
one more.
Maybe one more, and we'll see if I've caught some wind that they're going to change the 6-game rule, and Ohio State will be able to compete.
By the way,
for the Big Ten championship, which they should. You're exactly right.
They missed out on the Maryland game, the Illinois game, and by the way, the last 2 Michigan games have been over at half.
Trust me, I've been there.
They're a 30-point favorite for this one.
That's exactly right. And the one thing, though, and Ohio State fans are not going to like this. If you do get a scenario where Florida, although unlikely, beats Alabama.
That's the problem.
And Clemson beats Notre Dame.
Yeah.
And you're only sitting at 6 games, or let's say 5 games, and they don't change the rule, and they don't let them into, and they just get some crossover game next year, and they're a non-champ 6-0 Big Ten Ohio State team, they could get past.
Now, there I'm okay with it. If they get past because Bama loses, and it's an argument like, hey, we still think you're great, but there's just more. I've seen more quality from somebody else. But my thing is, I can see Ohio State this morning. I'm defending them. They look the part. They are the part. The games they missed are irrelevant blowout games against the Illini and the Terps.
And we fail to realize also, and listen, I get labeled a Buckeye defender, and that's fine. I mean, they're a great program. They're on a historically great run right now. They're clearly in the class of Clemson and Alabama. And Notre Dame's on a great run right now. And I think it's better when we've got some of these northern teams that are playing great football.
Totally agree.
Okay, so having said that, let's just keep in mind now that as great as Alabama has looked, they have had the ability to develop, right? It wasn't listen, I'm old enough to remember that in their first 4 games, they gave up over 600 yards to Ole Miss, right? And everyone was like, well, maybe this defense isn't as good as we thought. And then all of a sudden, they've corrected those deficiencies on defense. They've gotten better. Mac Jones has even gotten better. And now Alabama looks great. Well, let's afford at least in some vein, the same opportunity for development for Ohio State. Everyone's like, well, in their first 4 games, did you see how many yards Indiana threw for? Well, one, Indiana's a really good team.
They are.
And they proved that last week by not having their quarterback and still beating Wisconsin basically on the back of their defense, right? So that team is a really good team, which means that the win for Ohio State over Indiana is a really good win. And then let's also remember that last week, without 3 offensive linemen, a defensive end, a safety, and their starting linebacker, without their head coach and 3 more offensive assistants, they went out there and hammered Michigan State, who had just beaten Northwestern the previous week.
Yeah.
So they got a lot better last week. Let's give them at least that opportunity for growth, which was afforded Alabama early in their season.
So I think when I walk on the street, people walk up to me and go, hey, you're America's honesty broker. And so when everybody was kissing up to BYU,
that's hilarious.
I was here saying
hilarious.
I will defend 2, 3, and 4 loss SEC teams over an undefeated Mountain West team, and you guys all love BYU, and they lost to something that sounds like a soap, Coastal Carolina or something.
Well, Coastal Carolina, by the way, has 2 top 20 wins.
Oh, blah, blah, blah.
Well, they do. They do. That's a fact. Listen, you want to be the honesty broker? I just brought you facts right in the middle of your forehead.
Okay.
They beat Louisiana, who beat a top 10 team, Iowa State this year, and they beat BYU.
God, beat Iowa State. God, that put up a plaque for that.
The committee thinks Iowa State is really good. They have them ranked at 7.
Look, we're showing highlights. I can't believe it was not on cable access.
Listen,
the point being...
How about this being the point? Hold on. Time out. How about we just afford them an avenue for the playoff, or let them break away and have their own national championship?
Okay, that's fine. I don't want to hear the Mountain West has to be afforded a chance at a national championship. Why? Why? Because they went undefeated and never played in a stadium with more than 22,000 people?
This is an awkward position because I am when it comes to big conferences, I'm a snob. Like you, I'm a big conference snob, and I don't think that the group of 5 schools play a requisite schedule or have a requisite roster to be able to compete in a 4-team playoff. I just don't, right? I think that you're taking an opportunity away from a more deserving team. Maybe that makes me a realist, but I will tell you that it's beginning to this whole notion that the playoff was in some way also an avenue for those little guys to play, right? Like we were sold that, and that's just a lie. So here's the thing. One of 2 things, college football, either expand the playoff and create an avenue for a group of 5 team to at least go compete. If you want that so badly, then at least make a legitimate avenue, or let them break away. And let's create 2 divisions of major college football where you've got those schools vying for an 8-team playoff and a national championship, which I think would create more interest in those schools and those games, and let the Power 5 go and have their own playoff.
So let me ask you this. This is funny. So when they started this playoff, I missed this conversation. One of the arguments was it'll give little guys a chance to get in.
Yes, that
Who
was
made
one
that
of the
argument. That was never. I was never interested in that.
It was a false argument, but that was one of the arguments that this expanded playoff, because there were no. Because it wasn't just 2 teams and it was now 4 teams, and we're going to take just the 4 best, and there's no criteria of having to win your conference, and that this is going to create an avenue where a little guy could get in there. And it's like, no, that's false. That's absolutely
the
false.
opposite has happened.
The opposite has happened. And
we think less of little guys, which again, it's not, I don't feel I'm being a snob saying I like Miami Beach better than living in Nebraska in the winter. I think it's a nicer place to live. I don't think it's being snobby. Is it being snobby? Is that being snobby?
It's rude.
Well, rude, but that's not snobby.
No, but you are America's rudeness broker as well.
I'm just saying the idea that I'm supposed to be, hey, Colin, you have got to consider the Mountain West. I do consider it to have beautiful campuses.
West? The Mountain West is not being considered right now. It's more the American with Cincinnati, and then you've got the Coastal and the Sun Belt.
Okay.
By the way, there's a path for USC to potentially make the playoff.
Listen,
I'm just saying.
I have a lot of connections there. I've tried to be kind. They'd get their doors blown off by any of these good teams.
Possibly.
Luckiest.
But what happens if Bama wins, Notre Dame wins, and Ohio State wins out? Who's the fourth team?
Florida?
With 2 losses?
Yes.
Oh.
Okay, Florida plays USC tomorrow. Who are you taking?
I think Vegas would put Florida as a 5-point favorite.
Okay, let's put Florida in.
So we're just going to have Vegas do it.
Wait, time out.
My head hurts.
If that's your pushback, for years I've been saying
games
this.
have to matter. Games have to matter.
They do. I said,
and so we
50%.
can't just put. I mean, they lost to Texas A&M. By the way, your better argument would have been, well, let's put Texas A&M in, because at least Texas A&M beat Florida on the football field. Would only have one loss.
All right, that's fair. I'm not anti-USC. Don't marginalize me. Love them dearly. They're the luckiest team in the country. During COVID, Bama, Notre Dame, and Oregon got knocked off their schedule.
They are lucky. I'm just telling you that if you do get a Bama win, a Notre Dame win, and Ohio State wins out, like, who's the fourth team?
Then you go find an SEC team.
So you want A&M in that regard?
I have no problem with A&M in that regard.
Okay, that's fine.
I'm consistent with this.
That's fine.
And you laugh, but there have been nights I've had 2 people come up and say, hey, you're America's honesty broker. That's how people view me. I'm very proud of that. Okay, one more thing here. What time do we have? One more thing. Oh. So don't you think it's kind of coy? So this has not been a great year. I like Harbaugh, right? But I know the game he's playing. So, this is a funny game. So Jim's in trouble. That team's just a gravel road of nothing. And all of a sudden this week, Harbaugh up for 5 NFL jobs. And all of a sudden, Jim's signing an extension at Michigan. He leaked that story so he could sign an extension.
Well, the extension was worked on in February.
Maybe he knew they were going to be bad.
And, he pulled out of those extension talks because of COVID and the upcoming financial
Why
issue.
did all of a sudden this week, Jim, NFL teams keenly interested in Harbaugh? We're in week 12.
Michigan is not going to fire Jim Harbaugh.
They shouldn't.
So the only way that they part ways is if it's amicable and Jim has a landing spot in the NFL. So this might be, listen, and I know that there are ongoing extension talks. This is true, okay? There are extension talks with Jim and Michigan right now. Now, from what I've been told by sources close to it, they are not very close on the money. Michigan wants to take them way down in base salary and make it an incentive-laden contract. You've got to beat Ohio State.
Because of this year?
You've got to win a division.
Oh, come on.
You've got to do all these sort of things to make the money that you're making right
boy.
now. So, from what I've been told, he's thinking to himself, well, do I want to do that or just go back to the NFL? And so he's weighing that right now. From what I've been told, the ball is in Jim's court, whether he wants to accept this extension from Michigan, which would be a 3-year extension, or move on and go try something else.
I will say this. This is a good one. I would accept an incentive-laden contract if it said you got to win a bowl game and you got to beat Michigan State. I'm not putting I got to beat Ohio State in there because Ohio State's a better program. That's like asking Auburn, you got to beat Bama.
I don't know the specific language. I'm just saying in an incentive-laden contract, I'm sure that there's some language in there about beating certain teams, winning certain divisions, potentially a conference crown, potentially a playoff berth, so on and so forth.
You set 44 school records at Colorado. You were known as loving to check down the swing pass. That was old swing.
Is that what I was known
swing
for?
pass Klatt.
Is that right?
What one are you proudest of setting?
Well, I left as first of all, I was a walk-on, and then I left as the all-time leading passer.
Okay, but what stat did you like the most? Give me one that really means something to you.
Most fourth-quarter comebacks.
Now that's good. So you're clutch.
I was clutch.
You're pretty good on this show. Now the downside is first 3 quarters you were really struggled.
That might not be far from the truth, folks.
So you're the most fourth quarter comebacks in Colorado football history?
Yeah, at the time, yeah. I don't know if that's been passed or not.
That's quite a stat. You were the Elway of Colorado
There
football.
you go. And I grew up idolizing Elway. I grew up in Denver, so like the Duke was my guy, you know? It pains me to see them struggle the way
I know.
that
Hey,
they
listen,
struggle.
when you're our age, I'm a little younger than you, but when you're our age, Elway is all of our idols. I was a high school. Everybody wanted
absolutely.
to be. John Elway is it.
And of that group of quarterbacks, he's still a top 5 quarterback all time, at least in my eyes.
Okay. You know what's funny about this? And this is just a weird thing. More players want to be Steph Curry than LeBron because LeBron physicality, you can't be LeBron as a kid.
That's right.
So kids want to be Steph because they look and think, I could be Steph. I can run around, small guy, shoot. Brady, as great as he is, I don't think he's the idol of a lot of quarterbacks because Elway there were so many things about him. Stanford, the arm, the drama, more people want to be Favre. Brett Favre, I think, is what a generation of kids wanted to be. Brett Favre and Elway. Brady's better than both statistically, but I don't think kids idolize Brady as much.
Think of it this way. John Elway was 20, 30 years ahead of his time. If he came out now with his build and athletic ability and arm, people would be talking about him as the greatest quarterback prospect ever.
Go look at YouTube Warren Moon in 1974. I was there. I was in the stands. Warren Moon was 6'4", mobile with a rocket arm.
Yes.
People don't understand.
Yes.
Warren Moon, nobody watched.
And lost half of his career in Canada.
In Canada.
I totally agree. By the way, when he got to Houston, you remember his Houston teams and Denver and Buffalo, like they had some unbelievable AFC matchups back in the day when the NFC was winning every single Super Bowl. It was like Houston, Denver, and Buffalo were playing unbelievable AFC playoff
and knocking each other off.
And by the way, and the Browns with Bernie Kosar under Marty Schottenheimer.
I'll give you an example. Want to hear an Elway story? True story. First NFL game I ever went to. Do we have any music for Uncle Colin's story time? So when I was a kid, we didn't have a lot of money, and I was mostly a Husky fan over a Seahawk fan. I love college football, and I don't know really why, because I don't know, because Huskies are around longer or something. I don't know. And so I went to my first Seahawk game with the Jones family, and I sat first row, third deck. I got there early, and John Elway was there.
In the old Kingdom.
And they had the big Seahawk logo.
Yeah.
The bad AstroTurf, Jim Zorn, Steve Largent, Sherman Smith, Jack Patera. So we get there early. It is 2 hours before game time. I have binoculars. John Elway's in a half shirt, a half-C. Those were cool back then. I still wear them, but most people don't. John Elway in the middle of the Seahawk helmet, the ear hole at the 50-yard line, and I'm not making this up, was flicking his wrist and hitting the little flag in the corner.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm not joking. Fine.
Oh, yeah.
50 yards. And he was aiming for the flag.
The pylon.
The pylon. And hitting it about every fourth throw.
Do you remember the wide receivers for Denver back in the day?
Yes.
Like Mark Jackson and Ricky Nattiel.
And they had a tight end, Mobley, if I recall.
No, he was a linebacker. Mobley Clarence K was a tight end.
Clarence K.
Off the field
yes.
problems.
Haven Moses.
Haven Moses was there. Dan Reeves, who was the head coach for the Broncos back then, in like 86, 87, Kubiak was the backup. Gary Kubiak was the backup quarterback, and he would throw the ball on one-on-one routes and all sorts to all those wide receivers a lot. And then John would come in and they would start dropping the ball because John threw the ball so hard. So Dan Reeves put in if you're a starter, you're not allowed to catch a ball from Gary Kubiak in practice rule. And so those starters had to either catch it from the Jugs gun marked all the way up to 10 or Elway. That was it. And so they would just shred those old Newman gloves, those old leather gloves. They went through tons of leather gloves, but you'd like that. Dan Reeves, no starter can catch a ball unless it's from John Elway or the Jugs gun.
So we learned today, when I walk down the street in Manhattan Beach, what do people call me?
A weirdo because you got a half shirt on.
That's pretty funny.
Those are back, by the way.
Once again, a little ahead of the curve here. All right, get out of here, Klatt.
For guys,
what game you got this week? What game you got?
Oh, high school, they love them.
Game? It's not official.
Okay,
it's not official. I can't say anything.
2020 college football isn't official.
By the way, watch out for UCLA and Iowa. There it is. Bring it up.
They don't play. Wisconsin plays Iowa, don't they?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. UCLA in their game against USC and Iowa against Wisconsin in their game.
All right,
Just gave you 2 upset alerts.
Hey, folks.
Why does he not get to follow?
Folks, they'll almost be an upset. Riveting content. Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.